On a freezing winter night, a billionaire shelters a silent little girl who refuses to wear her only coat. Days later, strangers arrive with polite smiles and legal papers. As the child quietly packs her bag, one truth is revealed: her coat was never meant for warmth, but for justice. The snow had been falling since dusk, the kind that erased sound and made the city feel abandoned. Milwaukee looked smaller under winter-muted lights, shuttered storefronts, breath turning white before it could become a thought. Caspian Rourke's car slowed near a corner store that had gone dark years ago. The sign still hung crooked, flickering like it was tired of pretending. That was when he saw her. A small figure stood beneath the broken awning. No sign, no cup, no outstretched hand. Just a girl, thin as a question, watching people pass as if counting exits rather than hoping for mercy. Caspian should have driven on. He usually did. But something was wrong. The girl wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking dramatically. She was too still. Her coat, what little she wore, wasn't enough for the cold, yet she clutched another jacket in her arms. An old one. Faded. Worn thin. She hugged it like it could hear her. Caspian rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he asked. The girl looked up. Blue eyes, alert, guarded. She didn't answer the question. Instead, she asked one of her own. "Is the store really closed forever?" The words hit him harder than begging would have. "Yes," he said quietly. "It's been closed a long time." She nodded, absorbing that information like it mattered, like it changed something important. Only then did she look at him properly. "My name is Marlowe," she said. "I'm not asking for money." Snow gathered in her hair. She didn't brush it away. Caspian realized too late that this was already happening, that whatever line he had drawn in his life, it had just been crossed. Caspian offered food first. Not cash, not charity. "Dinner," he said. "It's warm." Marlowe hesitated, not because she was afraid, but because she was calculating. "Can I work for it?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. "Work," he repeated. She nodded. "I don't take things for free." There was no pride in her voice, just a rule she had learned the hard way. They ended up at a small diner that stayed open for truckers and people with nowhere else to be. The heat rushed out when the door opened, fogging the windows behind them. Marlowe didn't sit right away. She wiped the table with a napkin, straightened the sugar jars, collected menus left behind by strangers who had already forgotten they'd been there. Only then did she climb onto the booth seat, feet not touching the floor. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who didn't know when the next meal would arrive and didn't want to offend this one. Caspian watched without pretending not to. "You don't have to earn dinner," he said gently. Marlowe shook her head. "If I earn it, people don't change their minds later." That landed somewhere deep and uncomfortable. When she finished, she folded the napkin, placed her spoon inside the bowl. Everything neat, everything ready to be taken away. Outside, the snow had thickened. Caspian exhaled. "You can't stay out here tonight." She stiffened, not defensive, just braced. "I know," she said. "I'll find somewhere." He hesitated only a second. "I have a guest house," he said. "Just for the night." Marlowe studied his face like a contract. "One night," she repeated. "Then we decide again." Caspian nodded. That was the first deal they made. Neither of them knew how much it would cost. The guest house was warm, quiet, untouched by the noise of Caspian's main estate. A place designed to feel temporary. Safe, but not inviting. Perfect, Marlowe seemed to think. She didn't explore. Didn't touch anything she wasn't shown. She stood in the doorway until Caspian pointed to the couch. "You can sleep there," he said. She nodded and sat down, fully dressed. Only then did Caspian notice. The coat. Marlowe placed it carefully on her lap, smoothed it flat, fingers tracing the frayed cuff like muscle memory. "You can put it on," he said. It's warm in here, but... She shook her head immediately. No. The refusal was instant. Absolute. Why not, he asked, keeping his voice light. Marlowe looked down. It's not for warmth. The way she said it made the room feel smaller. Caspian waited. My mom gave it to me, she continued. She said, when the time comes, I'll know. She hugged the coat tighter but still didn't wear it. Instead, she curled around it as if protecting something alive. Minutes passed. Her head tilted. Her breathing slowed. Marlowe fell asleep, sitting up, chin against her chest, arms wrapped around the coat like a promise she was afraid to break. Caspian stood in the doorway longer than he meant to. He realized something then quiet and terrifying. This child wasn't afraid of the cold. She was afraid of hope. And whatever that coat was waiting for, it wasn't tonight. Caspian showed Marlowe the guest room the way someone shows a hotel to a passing stranger. Slowly, carefully, without claiming ownership. This is yours, he said. You can sleep here. Marlowe stood in the doorway. She didn't step inside. The room was warm, clean, the bed untouched. A lamp glowed softly beside it, casting a square of light on the wall like an invitation. Marlowe looked at the bed, then at the floor beside it. I'll take the couch, she said. There's no couch in here. I know. She set her backpack down near the door, not inside the room but not outside either, placed exactly on the line where it could be retrieved quickly. Caspian frowned. Why don't you want the bed? Marlowe hesitated, then shrugged in a way that felt rehearsed. Beds mean staying, she said. I'm just borrowing the night. The words hit harder than she intended. Caspian opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. He had built entire companies by insisting on what made sense. This didn't feel like a moment to win. All right, he said quietly. The couch is fine. Marlowe nodded, relieved but not grateful. Relief, not joy, like someone who had just avoided a mistake. She moved to the couch in the living area and sat perfectly upright, hands folded. The old coat stayed in her lap. Bathroom's there, Caspian said. If you need anything, I won't, she replied quickly. Too quickly, he paused. You can, if you need. Marlowe looked up at him, studying his face again. Measuring risk. People say that, she said. Then they get tired. Caspian felt something tighten in his chest. I won't, he said, unsure if he was promising her or himself. Marlowe nodded once. Then she lay down on the couch, shoes neatly aligned beneath it, coat still clutched to her chest. She didn't turn off the light. Caspian stood there longer than necessary, realizing something he hadn't expected. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of belonging too much. Caspian woke in the middle of the night to silence. Not the peaceful kind, this was the kind that meant someone was awake, listening. He padded quietly into the living area. Marlowe was still on the couch. She hadn't moved. Her back was straight, head tilted forward, chin resting lightly against her chest. The coat lay folded on her lap, her small hands gripping it as if letting go would make something disappear. She was asleep, sitting up. Caspian froze. The light was still on. The lamp hummed faintly. Snow tapped against the window like fingers asking to be let in. He knelt beside her, careful not to wake her. She hadn't curled up the way children usually did. No sprawled limbs. No trust in gravity. Every muscle held just enough tension to spring awake. Ready to leave, Caspian remembered hotel rooms in cities he couldn't pronounce, sleeping in suits, phones buzzing beside his head. He had thought that was exhaustion. This was something else. He reached for a blanket, hesitated, then draped it gently over her shoulders. Marlowe stirred but didn't wake. Her fingers tightened around the coat. Easy, he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. For a moment, he considered moving the coat aside, laying her down properly. He stopped himself. Whatever that coat meant, it mattered more than comfort. He stood, stepped back, and watched from the doorway. This was not a child afraid of the dark. This was a child afraid of morning. Because morning meant decisions, and decisions meant people changing their minds. Caspian returned to his room but didn't sleep. By the time dawn crept in pale and blue, he had already decided something he hadn't yet said aloud. No one was taking her away today. Juniper Hale arrived just after sunrise snow clinging to the hem of her coat. She didn't wear authority loudly. No clipboard out front. No sharp questions. She smiled with her eyes first. Marlowe noticed immediately. She straightened, adjusted the coat on her lap. Juniper crouched to her level. "Good morning. I'm Juniper." Marlowe nodded. "Marlowe, can I sit?" Marlowe glanced at Caspian. He nodded. "Of course." Juniper sat cross-legged on the floor, giving Marlowe space. She noticed the backpack by the door still zipped, still untouched. "That's a nice bag," Juniper said casually. Marlowe followed her gaze. "I don't unpack." Juniper tilted her head. "Why not?" Marlowe shrugged again. The same practiced motion. "Because people change their minds." The words landed heavier in the daylight. Juniper didn't react, didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "That happens sometimes," she said. "But it's okay to unpack here." Marlowe looked at the bag, then away. "If I unpack," she said softly, "it means I thought I was staying." Silence filled the room. Caspian felt it like a weight on his chest. Juniper spoke gently. "And if you stay," Marlowe hugged the coat tighter, "then leaving hurts more." Juniper reached out, not touching, just close enough to be felt. "You're allowed to be here," she said. "For now." Marlowe considered that phrase carefully. "For now," she repeated. She nodded once. Not agreement. Acceptance of uncertainty. The backpack stayed closed. But for the first time since Caspian had met her, Marlowe leaned back against the couch. Just a little. The paperwork came quietly like it always did. No alarms, no raised voices, just forms placed neatly on the table edges, aligned ink pens uncapped. Juniper slid the clipboard toward Marlowe. "Just the basics," she said. "Nothing scary." Marlowe nodded, but her shoulders tightened anyway. She took the pen carefully, as if it might break if she held it too hard. Her handwriting was small, controlled. Each letter placed with intent. Name. She stopped. The pen hovered. Caspian watched from across the room, pretending not to. He had signed contracts worth billions without a second thought. This pause felt heavier than all of them combined. Juniper noticed. "Take your time." Marlowe swallowed, then wrote slowly, "Marlowe Wren." She stared at it for a moment. Then, after a breath that trembled just slightly, she added 2 words beneath. For now, Juniper's eyes flicked to Caspian. He felt it like a warning bell. "Why for now?" Juniper asked gently. Marlowe shrugged, the practiced motion again. "Names change," she said. "Places change. People decide things. That doesn't always happen," Juniper replied. Marlowe didn't argue. She simply looked down at the old coat folded beside her fingers, brushing the frayed seam. "My mom said names are promises," she said, "and promises are heavy." Caspian leaned forward. "Is that why you keep the coat?" Marlowe nodded once. "It's holding something for me." "What?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not yet." The room settled into silence. Juniper continued the form. Address, temporary residence, emergency contact. Marlowe hesitated again. "Can I leave that blank?" she asked. Juniper nodded. "For now." Marlowe smiled at that small brief gone too quickly. As Juniper gathered the papers, Marlowe carefully slid the clipboard back, aligning it exactly where it had been. Then she reached for her backpack, pulling it closer to her feet. Caspian noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said quickly. "I just like knowing where my things are." He nodded, though something twisted in his chest. This child didn't anchor herself to people. She anchored herself to exit plans. And for the first time, Caspian wondered what kind of past teaches a child to treat her own name like a temporary shelter. The house was quiet again that night. Not the nervous quiet of first meetings, but the kind that came after routines began to form. Marlo waited until the lights dimmed. She slipped off the couch, moving with practiced softness, bare feet memorizing the floor. The coat was folded in her arms. She stood in the kitchen doorway for a long time. The trash bin sat open, empty, waiting. Marlo stared at it, jaw clenched, eyes dry. "If I stop believing," she whispered to the coat, "it won't hurt anymore." Her fingers tightened. She lifted the coat, lowered it, lifted it again. A memory surfaced, her mother kneeling, needle between her teeth, hands moving fast. "This stays with you," Arden had said. "No matter what." Marlo closed her eyes. Believing was heavy. Believing meant waiting. Waiting meant disappointment. She stepped closer to the bin. Behind her, the floor creaked. Marlo. She froze. Caspian stood at the end of the hallway, hair rumpled, concern immediate. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to wake you." "What are you doing?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. She looked down at the coat. "I thought—" Her voice wavered just once. "I thought maybe it's time to stop." "Stop what?" "Waiting for something that might not happen." Caspian walked closer slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. "You don't have to throw it away," he said. "I know," she replied. "But if I keep it, I'll keep hoping." She hugged the coat to her chest again, conflicted. "Hope isn't a bad thing," he said. Marlo shook her head. "It is when people change their minds." The words hit like a bruise. Caspian knelt in front of her. "What if some people don't?" She met his eyes, studied him the way she always did, searching for cracks. "What if you do?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. "I don't know the future," he said honestly. "But I know I'm here tonight." That seemed to matter. Marlo slowly stepped back from the trash bin. She folded the coat again, smoother this time. "Careful. I'll keep it," she said. "Just a little longer." Caspian exhaled. That night, Marlo didn't sleep sitting up. She lay down, still clutching the coat, but her back touched the cushion fully. It wasn't trust, but it was the beginning of rest. Morning light revealed what the night had hidden. As Marlo sat at the table, Juniper noticed the coat again, how carefully it was folded, how Marlo's fingers lingered on one specific seam. "That stitching," Juniper said lightly. "It's very neat." Marlo stiffened. "My mom sewed it," she said quickly. Juniper nodded. "She was good." Marlo hesitated. Then with a small sigh, she turned the coat over. "There's something inside," she said. "I wasn't supposed to open it unless—" She trailed off. "Unless what?" Caspian asked. "Unless I had nowhere else to go." Juniper met Caspian's gaze, gave a subtle nod. Carefully, reverently, they opened the lining just enough. Inside was a folded photograph. Old, creased, protected by layers of fabric and care. Marlo took it out herself. The photo showed a woman with kind eyes and tired smile standing beside a brick house. One arm rested protectively on a small girl's shoulder. The house number was torn away. "That's my mom," Marlo said. "Arden." Caspian swallowed. She said if anything happened, Marlo continued, voice steady, "This would help me remember. Remember what Juniper asked. That we belonged somewhere." Silence filled the room. Juniper examined the stitching more closely. "This wasn't just sentimental," she said softly. "It was hidden on purpose." Marlo nodded. She said some things are safer when they look ordinary. Caspian felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. "What else did she say?" he asked. Marlo folded the photo carefully and slid it back into the lining. She said Marlo whispered not to trust anyone who smiles too much when they talk about helping. Caspian straightened. Somewhere far away, gears began to turn. This wasn't just a coat. It was a message, a warning, and a promise waiting to be kept. They didn't rush it. That was the first rule Juniper insisted on. Whatever was hidden inside the coat had waited years. It could wait a few more minutes. Marlowe sat at the table, hands folded, watching every movement. The coat lay between them, opened just enough to reveal the careful stitching that had held its secrets together. Juniper traced the seam with a fingertip. "Your mom knew how to hide things," she said softly. "This wasn't panic sewing. This was planned." Marlowe nodded. "She said some truths need to travel quietly." With slow precision, Juniper loosened the final thread. Something small dropped into her palm with a soft metallic sound. A key. Old-fashioned, narrow, not decorative. Used. Caspian felt the air change. "What does it open?" he asked. Marlowe stared at the key, eyes wide, not surprised, but heavy. "She said if I ever found it," she whispered, "it meant she couldn't come back." Silence swallowed the room. Juniper closed her fingers around the key. "Did she say where it belongs?" Marlowe shook her head. "Just that it wasn't for a door." Caspian leaned back, mind racing. Keys like that didn't open houses. They opened boxes, drawers, places meant to be accessed quietly. Safe deposit boxes, banks, hiding places adults trusted more than people. Soren Pike arrived an hour later, summoned with the fewest words Caspian had ever used on a call. "Bring discretion," he had said. Nothing more. Soren examined the key, eyes sharp. "This matches a deposit box style," he said. "Older banks. Downtown." Marlowe stiffened. "I don't want it taken." "No one's taking it," Caspian said immediately. "It stays with you." She studied his face, then nodded once. Juniper watched closely. "This changes things," she said. "But it doesn't change what matters." "What matters?" Caspian asked. "That Marlowe is safe," Juniper replied, "and that she doesn't feel like a problem that needs solving." Marlowe looked down at the coat. "It's okay," she said quietly. "It was always meant to be opened." That night, Marlowe placed the key back inside the coat, lining herself. She stitched the seam closed with trembling care, hands moving exactly the way her mother's must have. Caspian watched from the doorway. The coat had stopped being a shield. Now it was a map. The bank was old enough to smell like paper and time. Soren handled the formalities. Caspian stayed back with Marlowe, who sat on a bench near the window, coat folded beside her. The clerk returned with a small metal box. "This hasn't been opened in years," she said, curiosity leaking through professionalism. Inside the box were 3 items: a sealed envelope, a thin stack of documents carefully clipped, and a smaller fabric pouch empty, as if something had once been there and removed. Marlowe reached for the envelope but hesitated. "It's from my mom," she said. Not a question. Caspian nodded. "Do you want me to read it?" She shook her head. "I want to hear it." Juniper opened the envelope carefully. The paper inside was creased but clean. The handwriting was steady. Juniper began to read. "My name is Arden Wren. If you are reading this, I failed to come back the way I promised." Marlowe's fingers tightened on the bench. "I worked for a man who takes houses from people when they are weakest. He calls it redevelopment. He calls it legal." Caspian felt a familiar chill. He already knew the name. Gideon Pruitt smiles when he ruins lives. If he ever finds my daughter, he will try to claim her story the way he claimed our home. Marlowe's breath caught. The coat is not a memory. It is proof. The key will lead you to what he buried. Juniper paused, steadying her voice. "Marlowe, if you are safe, do not run anymore. If you are not, trust the one who chooses you without needing to own you." The room went very still. Juniper folded the letter slowly. Marlowe didn't cry. She stared at the floor, jaw clenched, absorbing the weight of truth settling into place. "She didn't abandon me," Marlowe said finally. "No," Juniper replied. "She protected you." Caspian looked at the documents next. Deeds, filings, transfer records marked abandoned property. Legal, clean, too clean. Soren's voice was low. This wasn't an accident. It was a system. Marlowe hugged the coat to her chest. She said not to trust him, Marlowe whispered. The man who helps on TV. Caspian's eyes hardened. He had done business with Gideon Pruitt. Not closely, not proudly, but enough. Enough to know what kind of man hid behind charity. This ends, Caspian said quietly. Marlowe looked up. I don't want trouble. Caspian met her gaze. I know. That was the problem. The house from the photograph stood 3 miles from the lake, on a street that had been renamed twice to forget what it once was. Caspian parked across the road. Snow coated the steps. The windows were dark. That's it, Marlowe said. I remember the stairs. Soren studied the file. According to records, it was abandoned during winter. Owner unreachable. Property reclaimed. Abandoned, Caspian repeated. In winter. Juniper shook her head. People don't abandon homes. Systems abandon people. They didn't go inside. Not yet. Instead, Soren pulled more records. Cross-referenced dates. Arden Wren's name appeared only once. As a witness who disappeared. She tried to stop this, Juniper said. Didn't she? Soren nodded. And she knew what would happen if she failed. Marlowe listened quietly. So the house wasn't taken because it was empty, she said. It was taken because my mom wouldn't stop. No one corrected her. Caspian felt anger rise, not explosive, but cold and focused. This isn't just about property, he said. It's about erasing people who notice patterns. Soren looked up. There's more. He slid over another page. A guardianship inquiry filed years ago. Withdrawn quietly. Filed by Gideon Pruitt. Juniper inhaled sharply. He was looking for her. Marlowe's shoulders drew inward. I don't want him to find me, she said. Caspian crouched in front of her, voice steady. He won't. She studied his face, searching for certainty. People say that, she replied. I know, Caspian said. That's why we won't say it lightly. They stood in the cold, the past pressing in from all sides. The house wasn't abandoned. The truth wasn't lost. It had been waiting. And now that it had been found, there was no quiet way forward. The television was on without anyone remembering who had turned it on. Snow slid down the glass in long, quiet lines. The room smelled faintly of coffee and clean linen. Morning had settled into the house like a held breath. Marlowe sat cross-legged on the rug, tracing the frayed edge of her coat with one finger. The sound came first applause, polite and practiced, before the image sharpened. A man stepped into frame. He wore a tailored coat the color of winter ash. His smile was smooth, generous, calibrated. The kind that promised safety without asking permission. Gideon Pruitt. A renewed commitment to families affected by redevelopment, he said, voice warm as a fireplace. No child should be left behind during progress. The camera cut to him, kneeling beside a group of children in matching hats. A banner behind him read, Winter Coats for Winter Hearts. Marlowe froze. Her finger stopped moving. The room changed. Caspian felt it before he understood it. He looked down and saw Marlowe's shoulders draw inward, her knees pulled closer to her chest. The coat slipped from her lap to the floor. She didn't reach for it. Juniper's eyes narrowed. Marlowe didn't answer. On the screen, Gideon laughed softly at something a reporter said. He reached out and placed a coat around a small boy's shoulders, tugging it snug with a paternal flourish. Marlowe stood up so fast the rug shifted beneath her. That's him, she said. Her voice didn't shake. That was the worst part. Caspian muted the television. The man who helps Marlowe continued staring at the darkened screen. The one my mom said not to trust. Juniper moved closer, keeping her hands visible. What makes you sure? Marlowe swallowed. Because he smiles when he's already decided. Caspian felt a cold clarity settle over him. He remembered boardrooms, remembered deals done with a handshake and a grin, remembered how easy it was to confuse confidence with kindness. "Did you meet him?" Juniper asked. Marlo shook her head. "No. But he met us." The words landed heavy. "He came to our street once," Marlo said. "He talked about fixing things, making it better. He asked my mom a lot of questions." "What kind of questions?" Caspian asked. "Who lived where?" Marlo replied. "Who paid on time? Who didn't have family?" Juniper exhaled slowly. "Predatory profiling." Marlo looked at her. "He brought coats then too." Caspian closed his eyes for a moment. On the television, frozen mid-frame, Gideon Pruitt still smiled. "He said he was helping," Marlo continued. "My mom didn't smile back." "What did she do?" Caspian asked. "She told me to pack a bag," Marlo said. "Just in case." Juniper's jaw tightened. "She sewed the coat that night," Marlo added. "She worked fast, like she was racing something." The room was silent except for the distant hum of the house. Caspian stepped toward the television and turned the sound back on. Gideon's voice filled the room again. "Transparency and accountability," he said smoothly. "We believe in doing things the right way." Marlo flinched at the word accountability. "That's his word," she whispered. "He uses it when he means control." Caspian watched the screen with new eyes. The angles, the lighting, the careful distance between Gideon and the children, close enough for cameras, far enough to remain untouched. "Has he tried to find you since?" Juniper asked. Marlo hesitated, then nodded. "There was a letter once," she said. "It said someone wanted to help me remember where I belonged." Caspian's chest tightened. "Who sent it?" "There wasn't a name," Marlo replied, "but the envelope smelled like his cologne." Juniper closed her eyes briefly. "That's not coincidence," she said. "No," Caspian agreed. "That's a man tying loose ends." On the screen, Gideon finished his speech. Applause swelled again. The reporter thanked him for his generosity. Caspian turned off the television completely. When he looked back, Marlo was kneeling on the floor picking up her coat. She folded it carefully, precisely. "I don't want him to see me again," she said. Caspian knelt in front of her, lowering himself to her height. "He won't," he said. "Not a promise. A decision." Marlo searched his face the way she always did, looking for exits, for cracks. "People say that," she replied. "I know," Caspian said quietly. "That's why I'm not just saying it." Outside, snow continued to fall, soft and relentless. And somewhere in the city, a man who smiled on television was already moving his pieces. The house was quiet in the way only late winter could make it, soundless, heavy, pressed flat by snow. The kind of quiet that felt like a held breath. Marlo waited until she was sure no one was watching. She didn't rush. That was important. Rushing meant panic, and panic drew attention. Attention changed minds. She slid off the couch and stood for a moment, barefoot on the cold floor, listening. The distant hum of the heating system. The faint tick of a clock she hadn't noticed before. Somewhere deeper in the house, Caspian's footsteps measured, distracted, moving away. Good. Marlo crossed the room and reached for her backpack. It was still where she had placed it days ago, resting against the wall by the door. Not inside any room. Not claiming space. Ready. She knelt and unzipped it halfway. Inside were only a few things. Folded socks. A notebook with most of its pages blank. A pencil sharpened down to something fragile. A photo she didn't look at anymore. She added nothing at first. Instead, she folded. She folded the blanket Juniper had given her once, twice again, until it was small enough to fit. She folded a sweater she had borrowed, smoothing the sleeves the way she always did, like creases could be controlled if you respected them enough. Her movements were precise, practiced. This wasn't the first time she had done this. When the zipper closed, it made a sound too loud for the room. Marlo froze. She waited. Nothing happened. She exhaled slowly. Then she reached for the coat. The old one. She hesitated this time. Not because she was afraid to touch it, but because touching it meant deciding what it was now. The coat lay on the couch, familiar and thin, its seams hiding the truth that had finally been seen. It no longer needed to carry anything. It had done its job. Marlowe picked it up and folded it carefully, just as she always had. But when she tried to place it in the backpack, it didn't fit. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she set it back down. The coat would stay. Some things weren't meant to leave quietly. She slung the backpack over her shoulder and stood, adjusted the strap, checked the door, turned the handle just enough to make sure it still opened smoothly. It did. That was when she heard footsteps behind her. Marlowe Caspian's voice. Low, not startled, concerned. She didn't turn around right away. She needed one more breath. I was going to tell you, she said finally. Caspian stepped into the room. He took in the backpack, the bare couch, the coat folded where it didn't belong anymore. Something shifted in his face. Tell me what he asked. Marlowe turned then. She kept her chin-level eyes steady like she had practiced in mirrors she didn't own. I'm leaving, she said. The words were soft, final. Caspian crossed the room in 3 strides. No, he said, not loud, but immediate. You're not. Marlowe shook her head. I have to. Why? His voice broke on the word before he could stop it. She looked down at the floor between them. Because he's looking for me. Caspian felt the answer like a blow. We'll handle that. You always say that, she replied. Not accusing. Just stating a pattern, and then people come with papers. He crouched in front of her, bringing himself level. I won't let anyone take you. She finally met his eyes. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. The sentence landed with a quiet violence. Caspian opened his mouth, then closed it again. He searched for something that didn't sound like a promise he couldn't keep. Marlowe, you have a life, she continued, voice calm, too calm. You have buildings, people, a name that makes doors open. She gestured gently around the room. I don't want to be the reason any of that breaks. Juniper appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of voices. She stopped when she saw the backpack. Oh, Marlowe, she said softly. Marlowe didn't look at her. I know how this goes, Marlowe said. First people are kind. Then it gets complicated. Then someone says they're sorry. She tightened her grip on the strap. I don't want sorry. Caspian reached out, then stopped himself. He remembered the rules she lived by. No sudden touches. No ownership. Where will you go? He asked. Marlowe shrugged. I'll figure it out. You're 9, Juniper said gently. Marlowe nodded. I've been 9 before. That broke something. Caspian stood abruptly and turned away, dragging a hand through his hair. He had faced hostile boards, hostile press, hostile markets. None of it had prepared him for this careful self-erasure disguised as maturity. You think leaving will protect me? He said, not turning back. It won't. She was quiet for a beat. It already has, she said. He faced her again. That's not fair. Marlowe's eyes softened. I know. Juniper stepped closer. Marlowe, listen to me. Leaving right now might actually make things worse. Marlowe shook her head. If I'm not here, there's nothing for him to take. Caspian dropped to one knee again, closer now, voice low. You're not a thing. She swallowed. For the first time, her composure cracked, just a hairline fracture. I know, she whispered. That's why I'm going. Silence wrapped around them. Then Caspian did something he had never done in a negotiation. He stopped trying to win. If you walk out that door, he said, I won't stop you. Marlowe's shoulders relaxed a fraction, but he continued. I need you to hear something first. She waited. I'm already in trouble, he said. The kind that doesn't go away if you disappear. She frowned. I'm in trouble because I know he went on, because I've seen what he did. Because I won't look away. Marlowe's grip tightened. You didn't cause this, he said. You revealed it. She looked at the coat on the couch. My mom said leaving keeps people safe, she said quietly. Sometimes, Caspian replied, and sometimes staying does. Juniper spoke then, voice steady. If you leave now, you'll be alone again. Marlowe looked at her. If you stay, Juniper continued, you won't be. The room held its breath. Marlowe closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet, but no tears fell. She slipped the backpack off her shoulder. Just a little. She didn't set it down, not yet. Just until we know, she said. Caspian nodded. That's enough. Marlowe walked back to the couch and sat. She placed the backpack at her feet. Within reach. Always. She reached for the coat, hesitated, then folded it tighter, smaller this time. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, a decision had been made. Not to run. Not yet. They arrived just after noon. Not in a rush. Not in a convoy. No sirens, no urgency, only a clean sedan easing into the driveway, as if it belonged there. Marlowe noticed first. She was sitting at the table, drawing slow lines in the margin of her notebook, when she looked up and said very quietly, "Someone's here." Caspian glanced toward the window. Two figures stepped out of the car, a woman in a charcoal coat, a man with a leather folder tucked under his arm. Both moved with the calm efficiency of people who expected doors to open. Juniper stood. "I'll handle this." Caspian nodded, though his jaw tightened. By the time the doorbell rang, Marlowe had already slid off her chair and moved closer to the couch, close enough to touch the folded coat if she needed to. Juniper opened the door. "Good afternoon," the woman said with a professional smile. "I'm Elaine Porter, Child Welfare Liaison. This is Mr. Lowell, Legal Counsel." Her voice was warm, reassuring, perfectly trained. Juniper returned the smile. "How can we help you?" Elaine glanced past her eyes, flicking briefly to Marlowe before settling back into place. "We're here to ensure a minor is residing in a legally appropriate environment." Marlowe's fingers curled into the couch fabric. Caspian stepped forward. "She is." Elaine turned to him. "Mr. Rourke, thank you for your cooperation." She said his name like a compliment. Mr. Lowell opened the folder. Paper rustled. Clean. Orderly. "There has been an inquiry regarding Marlowe Wren," he said. "We're obligated to verify guardianship." Juniper's tone remained even. "She's under temporary care." Elaine nodded. "Temporary arrangements require review." Marlowe watched their mouths move. The words slid past her like snow melt cold, inevitable. Caspian crouched beside her. "Hey," he murmured. "Stay with me?" She nodded once, did not look at him. Elaine took a step inside without asking. Not invasive, just confident. "Marlowe," she said gently. "We're here to help." Marlowe didn't answer. Elaine tilted her head. Sweetheart Marlowe lifted her gaze. People say that she replied. Then they take notes. A flicker crossed Elaine's face, surprise quickly smoothed away. Mr. Lowell cleared his throat. "We've received documentation suggesting a prior guardianship interest." Juniper stiffened, by whom Elaine's smile didn't change. A private entity acting in the child's best interests. Caspian's voice went cold. "Name it." Elaine hesitated just long enough to be noticed. Pruitt Development Trust, Marlowe's breath caught. She reached for the coat, pulling it onto her lap, not wearing it, just holding. "That's him," she whispered. Elaine lowered her voice as if sharing a kindness. "Mr. Pruitt has a long history of philanthropic involvement. His trust funds transitional housing and youth services." Caspian stood. "This meeting is over." Mr. Lowell raised a hand. "We're not here to remove the child today." The relief was sharp and suspicious. Elaine nodded. "We're here to explain options." She laid papers on the table, not sliding them, placing them, each page aligned. Given the inquiry, Elaine continued, Marlowe's placement will need reassessment. There may be a brief interim arrangement, where Juniper asked. Elaine smiled softly. A licensed facility. Warm. Structured. Marlowe's shoulders tightened. How long, she asked. Elaine met her eyes. Until things are clarified. Marlowe looked down. People say that too. Caspian felt anger rise, measured and dangerous. You're not taking her anywhere. Elaine's smile thinned. No one is taking anyone. She gestured to the papers. This is a process. Juniper leaned forward. Processes can harm children. Elaine sighed, sympathetic. Only when they're misunderstood. Marlowe stood. Everyone stopped. I'll go, she said. Caspian turned sharply. No. Marlowe didn't look at him. It's okay, I said I would if this happened. Juniper knelt. Marlowe, she shook her head. If I leave, it's easier. Elaine softened her tone further. See, she understands. Caspian stepped between them. She's 9. Elaine's eyes flicked to him. And very mature. That did it. Caspian's voice dropped. She is not mature. She is careful. There's a difference, Mr. Lowell checked his watch. We'll return with a formal notice. Elaine nodded. 24 hours. She looked at Marlowe one last time. Pack only what you need. Marlowe nodded. She already had. The door closed behind them with a sound too gentle for what it meant. Silence flooded back in. Marlowe sat slowly. She placed the coat back on the couch. Folded. Smaller than before. Caspian knelt in front of her, hands shaking just enough to matter. I won't let them do this, he said. She searched his face. People say that, she replied. I know, he said. That's why we won't say it quietly anymore. Outside, the sedan pulled away, and the clock began to tick. The bank was quieter than Marlowe remembered. No lines, no chatter, just the low hum of lights and the faint echo of footsteps that didn't want to be heard. Caspian walked beside her, not holding her hand, just close enough that she knew where he was. Juniper followed a step behind. Soren moved ahead, already speaking in careful tones to the clerk. Marlowe clutched the key inside her pocket. It felt heavier now. The clerk returned with a narrow metal box and placed it on the table without ceremony. No curiosity, no drama, just procedure. This is box 317, she said. It hasn't been accessed in 7 years. 7 years. Marlowe's chest tightened. Juniper looked at her. You don't have to open it. Marlowe shook her head. My mom waited. Caspian nodded once. We're here. Marlowe slid the key into the lock. The click echoed louder than it should have. Inside the box lay 3 things arranged with deliberate care. A manila envelope sealed with tape, a slim ledger bound in blue cloth, and a folded document wrapped in wax paper. Marlowe reached for the ledger first. Juniper opened it gently. Numbers filled the pages. Not messy, not rushed. Columns aligned with the kind of precision that came from fear sharpened into discipline. Soren leaned in, eyes narrowing. These are internal transfers. Caspian exhaled slowly. Shell accounts. Juniper looked up. Connected to who? Soren didn't hesitate. Pruitt Development Trust. Marlowe felt the room tilt. The manila envelope came next. Inside were copies of emails. Notices marked abandonment. Property transfers approved during winter months, always winter. Always after missed notices. Always families without lawyers. Juniper's voice was tight. This is systematic. Caspian's jaw clenched. This is theft wearing a suit. Finally, Marlowe unfolded the wax paper. Inside was a single page, a sworn statement. At the top, in steady handwriting, I, Arden Wren, submit this testimony knowing it may cost me my freedom. Juniper read aloud. I was instructed to alter records to accelerate property reclamation. When I refused, I was removed from my position. When I attempted to report it, I was warned that my daughter would become unplaced. Marlowe's breath caught. If you are reading this, Marlo, I did not leave you. I hid the truth where only you would carry it, because you were the only one I trusted not to sell it. Silence swallowed the room. Caspian felt something cold and irrevocable settle in his chest. They were going to erase her, Juniper said, and use the system to do it. Soren closed the ledger carefully. This is enough to force an emergency hearing. Marlo looked up. Does that mean I have to talk? Juniper met her eyes. Only if you want to. Marlo nodded slowly. I want to. Caspian reached out this time. He didn't stop himself. He rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. The box closed with a soft metallic sound. Whatever had been hidden was hidden no longer. And somewhere a man who smiled on television was about to learn that some truths once opened refused to be folded back. The house felt different that night. Not quieter, heavier. Papers covered the dining table. Soren spoke in low tones. Juniper made tea no one drank. Outside, snow kept falling steady and indifferent. Marlo sat on the couch with the coat beside her. Not on her lap, beside her. That mattered. Caspian watched her from across the room. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't crying. She was doing something far worse. She was thinking too much. Come sit with me, he said. She shook her head. I want to remember this part. Juniper frowned. Remember what? How it feels, Marlo replied. Before things change. That scared Caspian more than any legal threat. Later, when the house finally dimmed, Marlo stood and picked up her backpack. Juniper noticed immediately. Marlo, I just want to be ready, she said. For what? Caspian asked. In case tomorrow goes wrong. Caspian crossed the room. It won't. Marlo smiled faintly. People say that. He knelt in front of her. Then let me say something different. She waited. If tomorrow is hard, he said, you won't face it alone. And if it goes badly, you still won't be alone. She studied him. You don't know that. I'm choosing it, he replied. Silence stretched between them. Marlo slowly unzipped her backpack. Instead of adding clothes, she placed the coat inside. Not folded carefully, just placed. That's new, Juniper said softly. Marlo nodded. It doesn't need to protect me anymore. Caspian felt his throat tighten. Are you scared? He asked. Yes, Marlo said honestly, but not of leaving. Of what then? She looked toward the window where snow blurred the city lights. Of being believed, she said, and then forgotten. Caspian stood. That won't happen. She didn't answer. That night, Marlo slept in the bed for the first time. The backpack stayed by the door, but the coat stayed with her, not as armor, as proof. The courtroom was smaller than Marlo expected. No grand steps, no echoing halls, just woodlight and the low murmur of people pretending not to stare. She sat between Juniper and Caspian feet, not touching the floor. Across the room, Gideon Pruitt entered with his attorneys. He looked exactly like he did on television. Kind, calm, unhurried. When his eyes met Marlo's, he smiled. Marlo didn't look away. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Words flowed around her jurisdiction, emergency injunction, temporary guardianship. None of them meant much until the judge looked at her. Marlo Wren, he said gently. Do you understand why you're here? She nodded. Would you like to speak? Juniper leaned close. Only if you want to. Marlo stood. The room shifted. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She held up the coat. My mom gave me this, she said. She told me not to wear it until the truth was safe. Gideon's smile faltered just for a moment. Marlo continued. She sewed papers inside it, numbers, names, places, because she knew no one would look at a poor kid's coat. A murmur rippled through the room. She said if I ever needed help, Marlo went on to open it where people couldn't ignore me. She looked at the judge. My mom sewed the truth into my coat. Silence. Then Soren stepped forward, placing the evidence on the table. The judge examined it carefully. Gideon's attorney rose smooth and practiced, but the room had already changed. The judge looked up. "This court grants temporary protection," he said, "and orders a full investigation." Marlowe sat down slowly. Caspian closed his eyes. For the first time since winter began, something inside the room felt warm. The ruling came without drama. No raised voices, no sudden gasps, just the sound of paper turning and a pen pressing down, final and deliberate. The judge looked over the documents one last time, then up at Gideon Pruitt. "Effective immediately," he said, "the court grants temporary protective custody to Mr. Caspian Rourke. Any further contact with the minor by outside parties is prohibited pending investigation." Gideon's smile never fully disappeared, but it thinned. Just enough. Marlowe watched him carefully as he gathered his papers. He did not look at her again. That somehow felt like a victory. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Questions flew, cameras clicked. Caspian stepped in front of Marlowe without thinking. Not possessive, protective. A simple human reflex. "No comments," he said calmly. Juniper guided Marlowe through the side exit. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that came after storms. Marlowe stopped walking. Juniper turned. "Are you okay?" Marlowe nodded. "I just want to remember this part." "What part?" Caspian asked. "The part where it stopped being loud," she replied. Outside, snow fell in soft sheets, blurring the city into something gentler. Caspian knelt beside her. "You did something very brave." Marlowe shook her head. "I just didn't hide anymore." Juniper smiled. "That's bravery." Marlowe considered that. "Does this mean I stay?" she asked. Caspian didn't rush his answer. "Yes," he said. "For now." She smiled faintly at the words. "For now," she repeated. "That's okay." As they walked to the car, Marlowe reached into her backpack and touched the coat just to check. It was still there, but it felt different. Lighter. That night, the house felt warm in a way it never had before. Not because of the heat, because nothing was waiting to be taken. Marlowe sat on the floor of the guest room, the coat spread out in front of her, like a map that had finally led somewhere. Caspian watched from the doorway, saying nothing. Juniper sat nearby, a quiet witness. Marlowe picked up a pair of small scissors from the desk drawer. She hesitated, then began to cut the inner lining slowly, carefully, the way her mother had sewn it. Snip by snip, the seam opened. The space inside was empty now. No papers, no secrets. Marlowe folded the lining back and smoothed it flat. "It doesn't have to carry anything anymore," she said. Juniper nodded. "That means it did its job." Marlowe thought about that. Then she folded the coat one last time and placed it on the chair by the window. Not on her lap, not in her arms, just there. Caspian felt his throat tighten. "Are you sure?" Marlowe nodded. "I don't need it to protect me now." She stood and went to the closet. Inside hung a new winter coat, thicker, brighter, untouched. She put it on. It fit. When she turned back, she glanced once more at the old coat. "Thank you," she whispered. No one laughed. No one rushed her. Outside, the snow kept falling, but the house felt sealed against it, not locked, just safe. For the first time, Marlowe slept without the backpack near the door. Spring did not arrive suddenly. It crept in quietly the way trust did. Marlowe walked to school each morning with Caspian, not holding hands, just close enough. She learned the route, learned the names of streets, learned which corners smelled like bread instead of exhaust. She began to unpack things, not all at once. One book on the shelf, one drawing on the fridge, one sock placed in a drawer instead of a bag. Caspian noticed everything. He never commented. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the last of the snow melted into the gutter, Marlowe sat beside him on the porch. "Do you think my mom would like it here?" she asked. "Yes," Caspian said, without hesitation. I think she'd be relieved. Marlowe nodded. Then she asked the question she had never asked before. Can I stay? Even if I don't need to, Caspian turned to her fully. You don't have to earn staying, he said. You don't have to be careful. She considered that for a long moment. Then she leaned back against the porch railing and smiled, really smiled. That feels strange, she said. Good strange, he asked. Yes, she replied. Warm strange. Inside the house, the old coat still hung by the window. Not hidden, not used, just remembered. Outside, the city moved on. And for the first time in a long time, Marlowe didn't feel like she had to keep up. She was warm enough. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.